For hundreds of years, Jews lived in Eastern Europe, subject to the tyranny of czars, under conditions of extreme poverty and persecution, harassed by officials, and helpless before the physical violence, pogroms or semi-organized riots of benighted peasants. The Jews were usually forbidden to own land. In an overwhelmingly agricultural country, a severe economic handicap. They were forced to live within certain prescribed areas called the Pale. There, scraping by as best they could, they engaged in petty trading, working at a few crafts, and lived off their wits. The Luftmensch, the vivid Yiddish word, means someone who lives off the air, through a deal here, a bit of trade there, and some borrowing where possible, is a characteristic figure of East European Jewish life. Most of the Jews lived in the shtetl, which was not, as sometimes supposed, a village. It was a small town. Generations of poverty inevitably left their mark in physical debility, social demoralization, a widespread attitude of passivity. God would help, man could not. Yet even in their impoverishment, the East European Jews created a remarkable culture. For many centuries, it was organically religious. That is, every department of life was shaped and colored by religious prescription and value. By the 19th century, it was painfully transformed into a mixture of religious and secular, the two linked in a tense but creative relationship. For the Jews maintained themselves through a memory of greatness. It was not so much the greatness of temples or ancient kings that they remembered, as it was the grandeur of their religious vision. For them, the Bible was a living reality. It was a token of promise, a source of wisdom, a guide to conduct. As the philosopher Isaiah Berlin has remarked, the Jews of East Europe put all their faith in God and concentrated all their hope either upon individual salvation, immortality in the sight of God, or upon the coming of the Messiah.
Came to America in 1904. I was fleeing persecution and the army of the Tsar. Reached Ellis Island alone and half insane, so I left there with a different name. If it wasn't for my people, I don't know what I'd do. And I thank the Lord above me that I was born a Jew. They sheltered me and fed me till I got on my feet, and my mother's words came back to me. Just don't forget where you came from, my son, and the world of your fathers you'll soon leave behind. Just keep the faith of your people wherever you go. They're a friend you will find. I was just another greenhorn looking for a job. I prevailed upon a landsman to finally take me on. Worked as a peddler 10 hours every day. In the evening I brought home my pay. Scrimped and I saved till I put enough aside. Then I sent it to my father, his passage for to buy. Money for the steerage and money for the bride. It was 4 years since my mother died. I won't forget where I came from, my mother. Each day in the synagogue I pray for you. I built a life for us here in America. How proud you would be if you knew. Yay-da-da in America. Yay-da-da in America. Yay-da-da in America. Yay-da-da, yay-da-da. To bring my sisters and my baby brother too. Then we moved up to New England near some people that we knew. I made a bit of money in Boston's old North End, which we gradually learned how to spend. A bunch of little citizens I brought into this world, but most of them were no goods who squandered while I toiled. Sophisticate Americans, they very soon became. Of their father they would grow ashamed. Just don't forget where we came from, my children. The world of our fathers is what made us strong. Don't sell your souls for the thrills of America. What price must you pay to belong? My grandchildren are grown, and the one who is a doctor even keeps me in his home. He says to me, mein Zayde, when the children learn to speak a bissel Yiddish, you should teach them. The time, so many times when I feel that all was lost, we had come so far so fast that I wondered what the cost. But now I see my father's world begin to rise in my great-grandchildren's eyes.
The first Jewish settlers arrived in Fitchburg almost 100 years ago. Back then, many worked the peddler's trade, since very few other opportunities were open to them. Within a short time, others started small businesses of their own. Herman Kaufman started his tailor shop in the American House. Others opened bakery shops, clothing stores, and shoe stores. Later, they also started real estate businesses, cattle dealerships, insurance agencies, and department stores. Larger companies, many still in existence, were begun after the turn of the century. Louis Tater founded the Fitchburg Bottling Company. Benjamin Asher started a successful clothing factory. Sidney Anson founded what later became Anwelt Shoes. Morris Falk established the Independent Lock Company. Norman Rosenbaum, an Austrian Jew, ran Comfort Slipper Corporation. Martin and Frank Weinstein started Art Photo, later to become Berkey Photo. What that first immigrant generation began, the second often carried forward. Today, second or third generation sons and daughters of the Taters, Rosens, Millers, and others continue and improve what their fathers began with scanty capital. Jews have a passion for education. All Jewish immigrant families, no matter what their financial status, struggled to educate their children, often at great sacrifice. Sons of peddlers and storekeepers became successful doctors, lawyers, dentists, and teachers. Jews have showed no reluctance to pay for their privilege of being Americans. In World War II, some 500,000 Jewish young men joined the armed forces to serve on all fronts. Sons of Fitchburg and Leominster Jewish families brought home awards and decorations for bravery. Some gave their lives. A talented young pianist, Jacob Liggum, was the first young Jewish man from Fitchburg to be killed. Jewish Gold Star mothers have grieved for their sons. When Jewish immigrants first reached Fitchburg in the late 1800s, they sought the comfort of weekly prayers in one another's homes, as there was no synagogue. It would not have occurred to peddlers or merchants to work on a Sabbath, for the observance of the Shabbos was more than a day of rest and devotions. It was a link with past generations, binding Jews to their forefathers and to each other. In the old ways, Jews found strength and peace. In 1895, the city had 8 Jewish families. By the turn of the century, the number had increased to 15 families. This small group petitioned the state to incorporate under the name Agudas Achim, meaning brothers together. The congregation began to dream about building a shul, Yiddish for synagogue, and set out to raise funds. The new synagogue became a reality in 1905. Harry Ferguson carried into the new shul the first set of holy scrolls. Harris Winthrop presented the first Torah. Samuel Freeman, one of the organizers of the synagogue, took office as the first president of the congregation, and Jacob Borofsky was the first treasurer. The synagogue became a center of spiritual, cultural, and social life. Rabbi Harold Roth explains.
I think that the main contribution of the Jewish people as they came to Fitchburg was the building of a synagogue, which they felt very proud of. And the synagogue became the center for all activities, especially the Jewish religion. And they were able to come there every morning, afternoon, and night, and to recite their prayers. And thus, they established something that became permanent for all the settlers of the Jewish faith in Fitchburg, always to maintain the synagogue and to see to it that it becomes a center for worship and education of the children. The descendants were very proud to walk in their footsteps and to continually maintain a synagogue with a rabbi so that the Jewish religion could be taught and transposed down to their children from generation to generation. And thus, the Jewish religion became alive and is still living, and we hope so that it will be for many decades to come.
Although changes have taken place over the years, The importance of the synagogue as the heart of the community has not changed. Rabbi Lowell Weiss of the Leominster Synagogue explains.
The synagogue has never been a more central place within the history of the Jewish community. The synagogue is providing the focal point for the Jewish community to express its peoplehood, as well as a focal point for it expressing its love of God and its worship. The synagogue is fulfilling its traditional role of Beit Tfilah, house of prayer, Beit Knesset, house of assembly, and Beit Midrash, house of study. The synagogue is the central point within the entire Jewish community, encompassing all of the various activities, but more importantly, encompassing the various expressions of what it means to be a Jew. For to define Judaism as a religion, a way of worshiping God, is not sufficient. One needs to define it as an entire people, an ethnos, if you will, even a civilization. And so our community, our synagogue provides that expression and that ability. Whether it's Hadassah, B'nai B'rith, UJA, all look to the synagogue as its central focus.
Children attended the Hebrew school taught by the rabbi, where the younger generation learned Hebrew and the significance of Jewish customs and holy days. In the early days, a young teacher came twice a week to teach the children after the regular school hours. The children had their Young Judea Club and entertained with dramatic productions on holidays. From the synagogue, the heart of the Jewish community, stemmed other benefits. By means of the Jewish Fitchburg Credit Union that met monthly in the synagogue, Jews helped one another financially. To be a member of the union and to borrow funds, a man had to hold a membership in the shul. He could borrow a maximum loan of $300, repaying the loan weekly if possible. Almost all Jews belonged to this group, and some got their start by means of these small loans. As the Jewish people had no burial ground, they had to inter their dead in Worcester or Boston. In 1912, a committee negotiated the purchase of land on Rollstone Road to be used as a cemetery. Over the years, members contributed gifts to make improvements both to the cemetery and the shul. The old Jewish customs still have a strong hold on Fitchburg and Leominster Jews.
The Jewish liturgical calendar is very, very full. Every week is the Sabbath, Shabbat, which is the highlight of the week and is where all our programs revolve around. Our major services are held on Shabbat. The three major pilgrimage festivals from the Bible are Passover, which commemorates the exodus and liberation of the Jewish people from Egyptian bondage, Shavuot, which comes out in May this year, which commemorates the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, and Sukkot, which comes out in the fall, the Feast of Tabernacles, which commemorates the wandering of the Jewish people for the 40 years in the wilderness. In addition, of course, the high holiday period in September, October of Rosh Hashanah, our New Year's, and Yom Kippur, our Day of Atonement, provides an outlet for confession and introspection and an ability for the Jew to try to do better. The later holidays of Judaism are Hanukkah and Purim and Israel Independence Day, all of them celebrating miraculous feats of deliverance for the Jew who is either under foreign domination in Israel or under foreign rule in a foreign country.
One of the most beautiful celebrations is the Passover ritual, which recalls God's rescue of his people from Egypt.
The Seder meal is a family-community gathering. It's held in the home, but it's never held with only one family, but rather people invite friends and relatives, and it becomes an extended family in the most beautiful sense of the word. The children are involved through the asking of the 4 questions. Those 4 questions basically talk about how this night of Passover is different than other nights of the year, mainly used to keep the children's interest, because the major purpose of the Seder is to experience and to relive the exodus from Egypt and to socialize our children into that tremendous and beautiful event. And so the questions allow our children to get involved. The children are also involved through the hiding of the afikomen, which is the final food that's eaten at Passover. If the children hide it and we can't find it, then the Seder can't go on. It provides the children an opportunity to receive presents, but also to remain awake and involved, at least through the end of the meal. The elders of at the Seder lead the Seder. They direct the questioning and the discussions and the liturgical readings, so that the Seder becomes a microcosm of the community, providing socialization and providing an experiential method of learning, which hopefully we can use throughout the year.
From the Hebrew religion sprang societies that extended a helping hand and perpetuated ancient traditions. As in Protestant and Catholic churches, the synagogue had its men's and women's groups. The sisterhood, as old as the synagogue itself, performed numberless services over the years, and when the new synagogue was built, the women raised thousands of dollars. During the early years, two youth organizations, the Young Men's Hebrew Association and the Young Women's Hebrew Association, had much the same type of program as the Protestant YMCA. The Always Active Women in 1925 founded a Hebrew Lady Society that flourished for a number of years. Societies with national connections sustained a longer life. The Organization of Hadassah, founded in New York in 1912 by Henrietta Zold, a tireless worker for Zionism, spread throughout the country and achieved impressive feats in Israel. In more than half a century, Hadassah clubs in America have established hospitals, clinics, sponsored medical research, child care, and educational projects in Israel. Hadassah is Hebrew for the legendary Esther of the Bible, who dedicated herself to the saving of her people. Today, Esther's daughters are carrying on a magnificent work. In 1927, a group of women organized the chapter of Hadassah in the Fitchburg-Leominster area. All Jews share a common concern for their fellow Jews still undergoing persecution in various parts of the world. For 3 centuries, Jews have had the reputation of caring for their own, but their good deeds are not restricted wholly to Jews. The Probus Club, a national organization for professional men, initiated in Fitchburg in 1938 under leadership of attorney Joseph Fine, has given distinguished service in behalf of retarded children, regardless of race or creed. Another national organization, B'nai B'rith, the oldest and largest Jewish service organization in the world, started in 1843, lends a helping hand to veterans, combats racial discrimination through its Anti-Defamation League, and participates actively on a non-sectarian basis in efforts to make the community a better place in which to live. B'nai B'rith, meaning children of God, refers to the Old Testament's covenant between God and Israel, when the 10 Commandments were accepted as a guide for behavior. Fitchburg and Leominster combined have an active B'nai B'rith. The Menorah Post of the Jewish War Veterans, founded by Philip Rubenstein, Michael Cohen, and Howard J. Rome, is concerned with the interests of veterans. The Fitchburg Jewish Federation Incorporated, which helps support the United Jewish Appeal, has been active in raising funds to help Jewish immigrants abroad settle in Israel. Both first and second generation Jews have been deeply interested in the Masonic order. Fitchburg Jews are well represented in the city's Masonic lodges. Judge Pennant was worshipful master of the Charles W. Moore Lodge from 1940 to 1941. For 25 years, members of the Jewish communities in Fitchburg and Leominster felt the need for a center for their cultural, social, and recreational activities. The dream came true in 1946 when they purchased the former Universalist Church building on Day Street, and they set to work to renovate the interior. The center bustled with life and activity as it developed varied programs that reached every member of the family, from nursery school to sports for youth and social affairs for adults. Forums and concerts were often attended by members of other faiths. In the course of a year, 20,000 persons passed through the door of the center. Today, the descendants of the early Jewish immigrants continue to make important contributions to the life of the Fitchburg and Leominster community. Small businesses, begun in the early years, are now large and thriving concerns. Professionals in law, education, and medicine provide important services for the welfare of all citizens. But most important of all, today we can see the reality of the early Jewish immigrants' dream in the eyes of our children. From Barney Goldstein's time, the journey has taken 100 years.
I